where is Justin Fields going to end up? Like, I think that's the biggest question mark coming out of it. You know, if we just rewind back a week ago, it was, Justin Fields favored to go to Pittsburgh, Justin Fields favored to go to Minnesota, Justin Fields favored to go to almost every team that needed a quarterback, and they've all addressed the position, and Justin Fields is still in Chicago.
Yeah, I wish I could answer that question for you, Mark, but I have no freaking idea. I mean, there's a lot of spots that have been taken up. You just addressed a lot of them, but there aren't too many other landing spots, especially if he's going to be a starting quarterback next season. It's almost starting to look like he's going to be behind someone, maybe a backup, maybe have to compete for the starting job in camp, something like that. But I just don't know what the Bears are doing or what they're necessarily waiting for. I'm sure there are so many more intricacies to this and levels of this that I do not understand because I'm not in the front office of an NFL organization and don't have that knowledge and background. But I'm curious, just as the casual fan, like, what is going on in Chicago? Do you like Caleb Williams or do you not? Are you going to draft him or are you not? And if you are going to draft him, why is it so tough to find a landing spot or a trade partner for Justin Fields? And maybe that's because the market isn't all that high on him, which is surprising to me, but I guess not totally out of the question.
Yeah, I think when you look at the two teams that he was linked to the most, right? It was Atlanta and it was Pittsburgh, and they were able to go get a quarterback that they believe is probably just as good or comparable to Justin Fields. Cousins, they probably have rated much higher, but, in Pittsburgh with the situation with Russell Wilson, they probably feel like the ceilings are similar, and they were able to get him without, they're able to get Wilson very cheap without any trade compensation. So that was obviously a little bit more attractive to the Steelers. So then it became like, hey, like, where is he going to find a home? The Raiders got Gardner Minshew. New England went out and got Jacoby Brissett. So all these spots that we thought he might go to have dried up, and it makes you realize that there's not a huge market for Fields right now. And the ball is now in the Bears' court as to how do you maneuver next? Do you keep him and wait until, an urgent need pops up and a team might need a quarterback if something, happens like an injury or whatnot during the, camp? Or do you just try and move him and get what you can for him at this point?
It has to have the Bears feeling like fairly good about taking Caleb Williams now, knowing that not too many teams want Justin Fields. Like, that has to make their answer of, if they were still questioning at all of whether they should go with Williams or keep Fields, that, okay, Fields probably isn't the guy because no one else is jumping at the bit to come grab him, right? That's kind of where my mind goes in all of this.
Absolutely. It just reinforces that they're making the right decision with Caleb Williams. When you look at how Fields is viewed across the league, teams not, jumping in line to trade compensation to get field services. And I think, the next step is to figure out, if you're Justin Fields, do you have a say in where you go if you're not going to be a starter? And I think that's important. Like, he wants to make sure if he's not going to be starting, he wants to land in a spot that's going to be good for his development. And, there are teams out there that probably could use a solid backup quarterback like Justin Fields if that's going to be his path. But I think if the starting positions are all dried up, he has to start, maybe he can have, if the Bears aren't going to get a lot of compensation for him, maybe that opens the door to him to be able to kind of steer, the direction of where his next landing spot's going to be.
What is happening with Luka Doncic right now? 7 straight triple doubles? That's absolutely absurd.
Yeah, I mean, he's playing incredible. And, Dallas, we talked about this a little bit earlier. The West is going to be interesting with some of these lower seeds and, the upper seeds, especially Minnesota, losing Cat. But, yeah, I think Dallas is a team that you definitely keep your eye on because we know when it gets to the playoffs, he's not coming off the floor. They're going to go as far as Luka takes them.
Yes, and I'm kind of a believer in the Mavs right now at the time being. They're a team, though, that kind of is a roller coaster, so that my belief in them might only last a little bit longer. But
the gap between Dallas, where they are like in the play-in, and New Orleans, it's like, I think it's 2.5 games separates those teams now between like 8 and 5. So there can still be a lot of ground made. And I think you look at this Dallas team, they could probably shoot up into, that 5 seed or whatnot. When you look at their schedule, they have one of the easiest remaining schedules. They play the Jazz twice. They play Houston twice, right? Houston, obviously, not going to be competitive without Şengün. So, Detroit, San Antonio, they still play them. So from a scheduling perspective, things are looking really good for the Mavs, where they could maybe leapfrog a couple of these teams as the West starts to take shape.
Yeah, there is a 1-game difference between the Suns, who are 6th right now, and then Dallas and Sacramento are both 7th and 8th, 8.5 games back from the top seed.
Mm-hmm.
You talk about Dallas having a really easy schedule. The Suns have the hardest schedule in the league remaining. Like, they play all of the top teams and a couple times and on the road. And Phoenix is a team that can't stay healthy. How many times has Bradley Beal been in and out of the lineup? Devin Booker. I could see Phoenix dropping out of the top 6, having to play in the play-in. Imagine having like a Warriors-Suns play-in game. I mean, I'm all here for it. That would be fantastic as an NBA fan watching. But I also want both of those teams in an actual series versus, I don't know, like the Kings. Really? Do we think the Kings can do anything if they potentially make it into that top 6? No. But in terms of like viewing as a fan for the play-in tournament, Suns versus Warriors versus Lakers, that would be awesome.
No, it would feel like a game 7. I mean, it would be absolutely electric. But again, you're robbed of the prior 6 games, right? You're only getting, the 1 game. Another team that really tough schedule, down the stretch here is the Pelicans. They still have to play the Celtics. They still have to play the Bucks. They still have to play the Clippers, Cleveland. They got a tough schedule. So that's a team that could slide back. But, in regards to Dallas, like, I think that they can really make up some ground. And, if Phoenix falls out, I think that would be crazy, because the play-in tournament cannot be what they were thinking of when they made the trade for Bradley Beal, right? Like, that's it. It can't be what Phoenix Suns fans weren't like, hey, you know what? Now we can get into the play-in and get to play the Warriors or a team like that. So I think that the way it's going to take shape is going to be really interesting. We look at the top, it's probably going to come down to the Nuggets, the Clippers, and OKC. I wouldn't count out the Thunder. I know they don't have the experience, and that's what everyone's going to point to, the further along we get. But, man, they got the vibes. They got the chemistry, right? Like, I don't know, man. Like, I might be done doubting the Thunder. It's hard not to take Denver. I think everybody is resigned to the fact that we could be looking at Denver-Boston again, but I like a little chaos. Like, I wouldn't mind seeing, the Clippers or OKC come out of the West, and I think that OKC would just be a great story.
Northwestern, 16-1, a plus money team in the Big Ten. They've beaten Purdue once. They've kept it semi-close until kind of the final minutes in that game. They're a team that, if they're fully healthy, I know they have some players that are injured. If they're fully healthy, I may be looking at Northwestern. Is there anyone else in the Big Ten? Because it does feel like getting past Purdue in the finals, assuming that Purdue gets there, like, that's a tall task. But is Purdue's attention going to be turned towards the tournament and not, losing to a 16 seed again?
Yeah, it's funny. We looked at our sims here. We ran our FTN conference tournament sims 10,000 times. And our value on a long shot, and guys, listen, you can pick other teams, but a long shot value for us is Iowa. Iowa came in well below. They're at plus 4,000 at some books. We have them with actually about a 5% chance of winning this tournament. I think that's a team you can look at here. Down the stretch, they beat Wisconsin. They beat Michigan State. They've played well. They make their free throws and they don't turn the ball over. So I agree. Yes, Purdue is clearly the class of this conference, but you can look for a long shot because we've seen teams get hot for a couple games in a row. You have Fran McCaffrey. You have the Hawkeyes flying very much under the radar in a very bunched up Big Ten. We think they're worth a look at plus 4,000 at most books.
I love that because I am a Iowa alum, which is why my eyes kind of lit up when you said that. So my Hawkeyes having some success, that's fantastic.